Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Citizen exclusive with your host, Mpoki Thompson. I'm at the South African High Commissioner's residence in Dar es Salaam. It's a special occasion today. In 1994, South Africa's majority African government gained rule of the country. Tanzania played a pivotal role in that power struggle. And today, I am with the South African High Commissioner to Tanzania, Noluthando Mayende-Malepe. Welcome to The Citizen.
Thank you very much.
We are celebrating a big milestone for South Africa, for Africa. I want you to tell us what this year, 30 years since 1994, means to you as a South African, means to you as an African and High Commissioner.
Thank you very much for having me during this special interview to talk about a very important milestone in the history of our country. As you would remember, South Africa emerged from a period of colonialism of more than 300 years and apartheid. And in 1994, we began a new journey of a new democratic dispensation, that has led us to where we are today, 30 years earlier. So indeed, it is a very important day to celebrate for our people and the whole continent as a whole, because the freedom that we achieved was achieved because of the support of the African continent as a whole, but also of the world at large. So as we reflect back 30 years ago, we also remember the kind of support that we received from all quarters during that time. Tanzania is one of those countries in East Africa in particular. I can mention Zambia, for instance, which was also a home for our freedom fighters. Tanzania opened its doors, its borders, I can even say its heart, because through its people, our people, freedom fighters, were welcomed and accommodated, also given safety, running away from a brutal system of governance in their mother country, and came here to Tanzania. So those are special memories that make us appreciate the journey which we took more than 300 years ago. You remember that Africa was under colonialism for more than 300 years. Other countries got freedom in the 60s like you did in Tanzania, but South Africa was a latecomer because we were then under the shackles of apartheid. Then in 1994, after a long, protracted struggle, our people, many died, many were injured. And I can say many have stories to tell, those who are alive, of how life was during that time. Indeed, life was not for the black people of South Africa because they have no rights, they had no voice, they had no right even to vote. As we are excited tomorrow, our people are going to go to the vote tomorrow, which is the 29th of May, 2024. We are excited because our democracy is though young, it's maturing, after 30 years. So we do have, especially my generation and the generation of our parents, as well as our great-great-grand, other generations before us. They would have reflected those who, if they were alive, including our father, founding father Nelson Mandela, of the journey that we traveled in the struggle. They were in prison. He was in prison. Nelson Mandela was in prison for 27 years, almost 30 years. Yeah. And he was prepared even to die for his people. So there are many, O.R. Tambo mobilized the international community, to support the struggle that was waged by the African National Congress, in partnership, of course, with the Pan-Africanist movement of South Africa then. Yeah. So indeed, I lived through apartheid. I grew up through the system. I know and remember, and many of my peers would remember, what it meant to us. Yeah. It's only our children now who are benefiting from the democratic dispensation that we have now. Yeah. Even though there's still a lot to be done, there's still a lot to achieve, but at least there's a lot of progress in all angles. Yes. In terms of development of the country, in terms of the economy, in terms of education, in terms of the quality of life of our people, infrastructure development, you name it. Yeah. A lot has been done, to ensure that South Africa enjoy their own country as full citizens, of South Africa.
Yes, indeed. Now that we're marking, 30 years, these are 3 decades, I want us to look at, in particular, the foreign policy, how it has evolved over the years in relation to how you cooperate with countries that helped you gain freedom, particularly Tanzania. Can you talk about how the foreign policy, South Africa's foreign policy, has evolved in these 30 years?
Mm. South Africa's foreign policy has hinged mainly on Africa as a continent. And of course, it includes other elements too. We have friends all over the world, and we have relations with different countries but Africa, being our home continent, is where our starting point is in terms of our foreign policy. And as you would know, that South Africa was what we call a country then, which had a policy before 1994 that was different to the policy that we are having now. Okay. So we are a country that has moved from the past to be a player in terms of the international relations, and also in partnership with other countries. We are members of the international community. We are also members of SADC. We are members of the Commonwealth of Nations. We are the part of the African Union. We participate globally at the United Nations. Yeah. We also are part of BRICS as well. So we are a nation, that seeks to build relations with other nations. And coming back to Tanzania in particular, and I did mention earlier that Tanzania is very special to our nations. For instance, you can look at discussions that will take place, political discussions. People would refer to the ANC Morogoro Conference in 1969, which was kind of a watershed conference for the ANC at the time. And when the ANC as an organization reflects back, it looks to what the decisions and the resolutions that were taken at the time. So indeed, Tanzania and South Africa enjoy very friendly, fraternal, and cordial relations. We are where we are, we believe, because of your leadership then, your founding father, who's also our founding father, our father as well, Julius Nyerere.
Yes, indeed.
As we know, he opened his doors, he accommodated our freedom fighters. We even have graves when our people passed away. They were, buried with dignity away from home. And we can go and point out here, there are some graves here. The members of the PAC are more, they are more also members of the ANC. Morogoro, Mazimbu, we have people there whom we buried, and we were helped by the Tanzanian government at the moment.
Okay.
The ruling party, CCM, supported the African National Congress in a very big way, like I've indicated. We continue to enjoy those relations. We continue also to work together in terms of all the things that we would like to do. There's a school in Kiba, the Julius Nyerere School of Leadership, where the former frontline states, or the frontline states during the liberations, are also working together to ensure that those relationships are built into the future, to ensure that we collaborate, and to ensure that we also get our children, our young people, to understand where they come from and who they are in that respect. So indeed, Tanzania has been very good, and it also supported the PAC as well, ANC from South Africa, as well as the Pan-Africanist movement of South Africa during the struggle against apartheid. So the relations are very, very good for both countries and also for the continent. And you'll remember that there is another leader, O.R. Tambo, who was the president of the African National Congress then. He was based in Zambia and also partly here, because he was the one who ensured that he met with the leaders of the time, and they decided that they would accommodate our people during that time, our freedom fighters, and the freedom fighters, of course, of the other frontline states that I've referred to. So I don't know how much more, even today, we are very close, Tanzania and South Africa. And I think the first visits, firstly, both countries established diplomatic relations officially in 1994, immediately after the elections then, and the new government was ushered in, led by our founding father, Nelson Mandela.
And the first High Commissioner was Amin Pungwe. Yeah.
Yes, he is the very first one. And we respect him and love him very much, Many people remember him very, very much fondly, because also of the work he did as we were establishing a new government at the time. So indeed, if I recall, 2015, the former President Jacob Zuma visited Tanzania, I think early in the year, and later in the year, President Kikwete went to South Africa. And later on, also in 2019, there was a visit, I think, by President Kikwete,
The late Magufuli.
President John Magufuli,
Yes.
to South Africa to witness the inauguration of President Ramaphosa. Last year, most recently, President Samia Hassan visited South Africa on a state visit. It was very successful, and both our leaders, they recommitted to the importance of strengthening our relations in that regard. So the journey we are traveling together, and of course, before I forget, is that President Kikwete, when Madiba passed away in 2013, President Kikwete was then asked to speak, and they spoke about Madiba and also how we got our freedom and how Africa fought, for its own freedom and self-determination in the years previously. So that points also to the importance of the relations between South Africa and Tanzania. And when I arrived here as the High Commissioner, I had the wish to
That was in 2022.
2022 August, yes. I had a wish to start a Mandela lecture.
Okay.
And we started that with a lecture in Dar es Salaam University.
Okay.
And we were honored and privileged.
So is that still ongoing?
Yes, it was the beginning, so we will continue to do that. Yeah. Even though this year we will forego it and do it the following year, next year in 2025. Yeah. It was a very successful event, and again, former President Kikwete, inspired many in his speech, recalling even how Madiba visited Tanzania after his release from prison. So Tanzania was one of the first countries that he visited immediately after he was released from prison. So that tells you how important these two countries are to one another, and how we must build on that to ensure that future generations can also say these two countries, achieved much together for future generations.
Yes. Now, you've been part of the South African government for quite some time now, and you've held the High Commissioner role in different countries, West Africa, and now you're in Tanzania. I want you to highlight a little bit about some of the major challenges that you have witnessed in your role as High Commissioner, but also when you were as part of the South African cabinet, and also some of the triumphs as well. Because when we're talking about celebrating this major milestone, a lot of things happen, positive and negative. Can you highlight what have been some of the major challenges and how were they addressed?
I think for South Africa, the biggest challenge in the 30 years was what we call the transformation project. Bringing people who were diverse and who lived differently from one another, who understood themselves differently, and who were determined through race, either you were white or black, So the new government led by Nelson Mandela was uniting, and also based on non-racialism, on non-sexism, all of those principles that pin our democracy up to today. And also ensuring that now South Africa became part of the global community in the way it participated with other in in meetings and also in engaging with other countries in the rest of the world and in Africa. So that was the biggest challenge that I have personally experienced as a person who was in the country during that time of the leadership. Nelson Mandela tried to build a rainbow nation, and so that we all understood that we're all South Africans, irrespective of race or color, irrespective of religion, irrespective of our social backgrounds and so on. So we were one that time. So I've been to Egypt. Egypt is a friend of South Africa, and they've also supported us very, very well, you know. And I went to Egypt in 2011, and it was quite an interesting time because it was a time of the Arab Spring. Young people had, you know, risen up to raise their voices to say, no, we want freedom and so on. So it was an interesting period as well as a learning experience for me as a person, you know, because it was the first time that I was living and working in an Arab country. So the culture, the belief system was different from mine, but the people there were very supportive, you know, in ensuring that we're able to do the work that we were supposed to do. Even though there was a lot that was happening in Syria, for instance, you know, things were very serious there. You know, there was a war and so on and so on. So, yeah, coming to Benin, Benin also is a small country and French speaking. So I was responsible for Benin, both Benin and Togo. Mm-hmm. And it was a very different experience in West Africa, French-speaking country, but African nonetheless, you know. And we did try to do what we had to do in working together with them. There were achievements in terms also of the work that we were doing. President Zuma did, as the president then, visited Benin. President Ramaphosa visited Togo, I think in 2018. So it was, the experiences are far and wide, but they are very enriching in terms, because we're also learning about democracy from the other countries, African countries that had managed to get their freedom before us, you know. And they were successful in governing their countries. Egypt also had a lot of opportunities for South African businesses and as well as other businesses of the rest of the world. Okay. So now I'm in East Africa. It's another experience, yes, which is I welcome, and that this experience is something that I appreciate, and I think that one day it will come to be useful, you know, for the future that we don't know. Yeah, but I really appreciate having been to the other countries and so on.
Okay, so I want to talk now about, because you've had experience from South Africa, you went to Northern Africa, West Africa, now you're in East Africa. This cultural integration, I want you to elaborate a bit about that, because we know that South Africa and Tanzania share close ties, and even at a global scale, Kiswahili is being recognized. You know, July 7th is known as the Kiswahili Language Day. I want you to elaborate on the role of cultural educational exchanges between Tanzania, South Africa, and how that plays a pivotal role in strengthening these ties that have been established for 30 years now.
Culturally and educationally, this is a very big project for both South Africa and Tanzania, and they are very critical in the relationship that we are having as the two countries. The first issue is that one of the achievements that I would like to also talk about is the fact that we have agreed to get Swahili into South African schools as part of our education system, because we find that Swahili is a uniting language widely spoken on the continent, and therefore it was decided that let our children learn also as part of their education. That is one thing also. And in terms of our culture also, I want to also say that the African liberation heritage route that has the support by the South African business in 2018, where more than 1,000 school desks and chairs, as well as some toilet facilities, were donated by the High Commission, as well as the South African business community here in Tanzania. So that also speaks to the kind of relations that we are having with Tanzania. We want to go back to what we call our roots politically and make a contribution, recognizing what Tanzania did for us and our nation in that regard. So these projects are also a continuation of the cultural heritage that we have as the two countries. So we, for now also, before I go further, last year, November-December period, 2022, there was a program led by the Department of Arts and Culture in South Africa, as well as the Department of Arts and Culture and Sports in Tanzania. Yeah. So those departments came on a program which was called the Cultural Festival. That was very successful. Started here in Dar es Salaam. It went to Morogoro, to Dodoma, and also to Zanzibar, and back to Dar es Salaam. So there was music, history sharing, all sorts of things, dancing. And I saw, and we marveled at the Tanzanian young people dancing to Amapiano of South Africa. So you can see that there is more in common between us than what divides us. So indeed, that cultural program was very, very successful. And now we are looking also at the possibility of revisiting now as a High Commission at Morogoro. Okay. Yes, the initial plan was around October this year. And we will see how it works. Even if it doesn't happen this year or it happens in the other year, but it's something that I would like to do before my term ends, when it comes to an end, to go to Morogoro, revisit our history, see the monuments that are there. And one of the things South Africa would like to do is to erect a memorial with all the names of the freedom fighters, so that families, when they come to visit, they can see the names of their loved ones who fell along the way during that time of the struggle. So culturally, we would also want to see what more we can do in terms of culture, in terms of tourism. What would be the opportunities that would be there? So we are working on a special program, and maybe when we are ready, we will let you know so that we can tell you about it. But indeed, culture is a very important, because it unites us as Africans. And I've discovered that, even the food we eat is there's no difference, and even the way we may differ here and there, but there are commonalities, in that. So
Now, I want us to talk a little bit about the economic prospects. You've talked about the business ties that we have had. From the political perspective, the development, your role as High Commissioner of South Africa to Tanzania, you have witnessed, you have engaged with the Tanzanian and South African business community. What are some of the major areas that you think potentially the two countries can benefit? Because history has it that during the apartheid period, when Tanzania was under Mwalimu Nyerere, was helping South Africa regain its freedom or break away from the apartheid government, we decided to decline aid from the British government that was in support of the crude government in South Africa. That made Tanzania take a heavy economic beating. But now, 30 years later, engagements between Tanzania and South Africa have remained. On the economic perspective, when it comes to trade, we're both members of the SADC, the Southern African Development Community, and SADC is one of the biggest trading partners for Tanzania. How can these two countries ensure that bilateral trade continues to grow?
that is a very important question. And I think I must start with saying that last year, our two leaders, the President Cyril Ramaphosa and President Samia Suluhu Hassan, met and agreed that we must do more to ensure that we support one another economically. South Africa has about 250 companies in Tanzania, which are doing quite well. And also the exports range between 4 billion, but unfortunately, it's still for the benefit of more of South Africa than of Tanzania, if you look at the figures. So we think that we need to do more to ensure that South African companies come to Tanzania and participate, especially in the main sectors of the economy. We are already here in terms of manufacturing and mining, ICT, infrastructure development. That's where I would like to see our country coming in terms of infrastructure development. We know that Dodoma is now a city that is fast developing. And I've just not been there last month, and I realized that Dodoma will be a very big city in 5 years' time. That's my belief, I may not be here by that time, but I think that the way it's growing, and that is where now other countries must come in. We are the biggest trading partner with Tanzania. Of course, we are behind China, your China, USA, your UAE, your Saudi Arabia, your Japan, and so on. But as an African country, yeah, so we do want to ensure that South Africans see Tanzania as a place where they can bring their investments, yeah, in terms of all the sectors of the economy, you name them, you know. And I think there are opportunities there. And of course, Tanzania, from Tanzania, we import your coffee, gold, cashew nuts, and cotton. We've got very beautiful material. You know, I thought that Benin and Togo have the best in Africa, but now I realize that Tanzania too has a beautiful cotton. And Egypt, I'm told, has the best. Yeah, as they have the best cotton. So we've got to learn also from the Egyptians how they do it, all of us, you know. So we are also having a structure, binational commission that brings together the two countries in terms of heads of states, but also the ministers and the officials to come in now and say, in terms of the decisions we're making, what agreements do we have in place? That's what happened last year. So there are memorandums of understanding in terms of tourism, of education that I've mentioned, you know, and ICT and others that we are working on, you know, to consolidate and implement. So indeed, we also appreciate that Tanzania is also investing in South Africa. You know, Kamal Steel, based in Cape Town, is a big company from Tanzania that is doing a great job in our country in South Africa. So those are the kind. We also want Tanzanian people to invest in South Africa. President Ramaphosa has hosted a lot of investment, you know, what you call conferences, and invited the world to invest in South Africa. South Africa is open for business. He also emphasized African countries to go to South Africa and invest as well. President Samia did the same. She went to South Africa last year and said that, please come, you know, you can even come and plant rice. I will always remember that. That's what she said. And people were really keen to understand, can we really go and plant rice in Tanzania? She said the land is available. So those are the kind of engagements we need and which we must build on to ensure that we assist each other in terms of development, economy, and so on. So as I've indicated, I would like to see South Africa coming in, you know, through the companies that we have to come and invest.
So now, as we're looking to the future, we've marked 30 years now, focusing on the next 30 years and beyond. What do you think will define the relationship, the ties between Tanzania and South Africa, between South Africa and the rest of Africa? What is going to define that relationship moving forward?
For me, it's economic development. We have at all attained freedom. The last country was South Sudan. But we also have not forgotten that the people of Western Sahara need their freedom as well on the African continent, without even going far afield to Cuba, you know, where the people there are suffering But what is important for all Africans is economic development. We must own the means of production. We must be the ones who determine what we want to achieve by ourselves. We must be the ones who make the clothes. We must not take our material to Europe and they bring it back to us as finished product, our diamond, our gold. So for me, that is the next biggest challenge that we must now be seized with for the next 30 years. And we must ensure also that our countries are stable politically. Our children go to school. We have good health facilities for our nations, and we ensure that the development that has started continues. But for me, the most important aspect is around the economic development.
Okay.
For all our peoples in Africa.
Well, on that note, High Commissioner, it's a wrap for today. You were with me, Mpoki Thompson, for the Citizen Exclusive. I was with the South African High Commissioner to Tanzania, Noluthando. Until next time, it's a wrap.